Hello and welcome to another edition of the Up Your Assets podcast. I am your host, Ray Ferrara, CFP, founder and executive chair of Provise Management Group, LLC, a 40-year-old financial planning firm, which is a registered investment advisor serving 1,200 clients in more than 30 states and managing about $2.1 billion as of June 30th, 2026. For most of my life, I have been an entrepreneur and been blessed to have a great team of people that I respect and admire around me. As time has passed, my business values of putting the client first by serving as a fiduciary has never wavered. On the personal side, goals have kind of come and gone, with many accomplished. Some got tossed aside as unfulfilled. And as one looks back on their career, there are always things that you wish you had handled differently. There are some things you wonder why you did them at all. Aging brings some reflection of a life well lived, or perhaps not. Why are we reminiscing so much? Because our guest today has recently written a book entitled The Ladder, The Precarious Climb to Success, which reflects on his life's ambitions and goals, only to discover maybe they were not as important as they thought they were. Tom Giachetti, JD, has been a close personal friend for almost 40 years. We first met at a conference at which he was speaking, and soon thereafter, he became our first and only legal counsel before the Securities and Exchange Commission. In those days, we knew each other long before others knew who the heck we were in our respective professions. In addition to our professional relationship, we share similar experiences of being a family caretaker. Tom for his daughter and me for my wife. So for full disclosure, we know each other and we are very close friends. And Tom has not paid me to be on our podcast. I know he wants to, but he hasn't. But that isn't the reason I've invited Tom to the Up Your Assets podcast. It's because his book resonated with me in ways I couldn't have imagined before I read it. Let me share a little about Tom, the lawyer, before we talk about Tom, the author. Tom is a shareholder and is chair of the Investment Management and Securities Practice Group, a former investment banker and NASD registered representative. Tom's legal practice is devoted to investment-related matters, including the representation of investment advisors, financial planners, broker-dealers, public and private investment companies, CPA firms, and registered representatives throughout the United States. He also advises claimants and respondents in securities, regulatory, arbitration, and litigation matters. Tom is a recognized author and commentator on the investment-related legal matters and a frequent lecturer at securities industry compliance seminars, annual meetings, and educational programs throughout the country. He also serves as an expert witness in securities litigation and arbitration matters throughout the U.S. In 2024, Tom was featured in Investment Advisors Magazine 12th Annual IA 25, selected as one of the 25 most influential people in the investment advisory industry. And in 2021, he was awarded the prestigious Leadership Award from the Bob Veras Inside Information Forum. Tom, welcome to the Up Your Assets podcast. Anything you'd like to add about yourself that I missed?
Ray, I think you did a great job. We've known each other quite a long time.
It has, and it's been a great ride for both of us.
Ray, it's been a privilege, and it's been quite a privilege for me to know you, and for us to have this relationship for so many years.
Indeed. Well, Tom, as I mentioned earlier, we met at a conference in the late 80s in the Florida Panhandle. I think it was up at Destin area.
In Destin. It was in Destin, yeah.
How many conferences do you think you spoke at over your career? And tell us about one or two memorable moments, good, bad, or indifferent.
Ray, I haven't counted them, but I know there are several hundred. In some years, I would speak at 30 to 40, sometimes more, all around God's world, and enjoyed them all. Some smaller crowds, some with thousands in the audience. So it was always a lot of fun. A
Well,
couple.
Tom, I'm sorry.
No,
Tom, you've written a lot of articles that I've read through the years in the industry media. Um, what was the inspiration for a book, and specifically this book?
well, for this book, Ray, I would say the inspiration was for me to help others not make the mistakes that I did. And I truly became wanting to do this after I recovered from some depression in my mid 60s.
And from that inspiration, I assume that what you have written about your intent was to not just have it for professionals like yourself or for me, but for really anybody who's trying to climb that ladder.
There's no doubt, right? It is written for those in the beginning of the climb of the ladder, those who are in the midst of the climb, and those like me who are at the end of the climb. And many like me, I've come to learn, who have suffered the same type of depression, not clinical depression, but depression that, I climbed to the top, rang the bell, declared to be the best of the best, and I realized I was replaceable.
Yeah.
And I looked back and said, "Oh my God, what did I give up?" You know, because I gave a whole lot to for my aspirations, and didn't have really good work life God balance at all.
Well, in the beginning of the book, you go right to back to the beginning of life, a lot about your life as a child and a young adult in college, etc. How did those early years shape the young boy and the man that you became to be?
But they had a profound impact. I had a great childhood, or I do kid that I never had one. I was always serious, always working, but my mom, who's still alive today, is going to be 93 in 3 weeks.
God
Remi-
bless.
and I take her to Italy every year with me. She reminds me that I did have a childhood. She shows me some photos to remind me of that. And but I grew up in I would say, a lower middle class Italian family, very Catholic, very conservative. Food and family gatherings are always important, and I write about it in the book about the importance of communion with people and the breaking of bread, uh, because that's where I learned my best lessons in my life, around the table. And to this day, I miss them greatly. 20 people in a third floor flat with one bathroom, all together, having a great meal and homemade wine. So, and I grew up in a. My dad was he was the first person in his family to go to college. He went nights after he married my mother, and it was very important for him, that I go to college after high school, where I gave him a little pushback, but I went.
So it's funny you talk about that dinner table conversation. That I think it's true in many households, but it's particularly true, I think, in Italian households. I remember many a discussion growing up as a kid like you around that table, and in those days, of course, there was no Google for us to refer to, and the definitive book of knowledge at that time was either the Collier's Encyclopedia or the World Book
Yes,
Encyclopedia. And they were always right unless they disagreed with my father, then they obviously were wrong.
that's right. Uh, Ray, I remember like yesterday those encyclopedias in a credenza at our home, and my brothers would always laugh because I don't, my face would always be inside of one.
Well, those were some interesting times. As archaic as they seem today,
Yeah,
they did manage to get us through.
without a doubt.
Yeah. So, Tom, you grew up in this good Catholic family, Italian Catholic family, and you talked about God, and was it during that time that you first began to drift away, or where did that first separation bubble up?
Separation initially happened uh, really before I got married. I after I graduated from college, which I went to a Jesuit school and spent a little time in the seminary on weekends, never had a calling. I went to law school and grad school at the same time. And when I finished, I came out and I was going to church, was doing the Sunday readings, and I started to lose a little bit of my faith. Uh, the closer I got to things, the less I really liked what I saw. And after I got married, uh, and I devoted all of my energies to work, there was little time for God. And I blame nobody but me. Okay. It was my fault, nobody else's.
It's part of the choices we make.
Yes,
So
yes, it is.
I know you wrote the book while you were spending time, a good portion of the book anyway, while you were in Italy, and while we were corresponding back and forth while you were there, determined to get it finished before you left. Um, what are some of the lessons in the book that you'd like to see me and other readers learn from the book?
Now, there are a few of them, right? One is, you know, always being cognizant of a work-life balance, not living to work, working to live. I live to work. All right. I had blinders on, and it didn't bother me. But as I started a family and had a beautiful wife and still do, she stayed with me for all these years. God bless her. Uh, I realized that I was selfish, and not purposely selfish, but the demands of being successful in my day and age, our day and age, where the roles are much different today, where dads worked and mom stayed home and took care of pretty much everything. I define my role and my value more as the breadwinner versus the hands-on dad. My wife was both mom and dad to the kids for 20 something years while I traveled the country 3 to 4 days a week, sometimes more.
And hence the ability to work because you wanted to work, but not because you wanted to live.
Correct. And Maria, I would carry an iPad, a laptop everywhere I went, no matter where I was, whatever family gathering it was, I was working.
Well, I know there were several occasions over those years that it didn't take you long to get back to me. I always knew that if it wasn't almost instantaneous, you were wrapped up in something that was much more important than I was at the moment. But as soon as you were free, I got that phone call. So I appreciate what you're saying about working.
You
What
know, right? And I know that my clients have appreciated that. They kid me many times where I say I'm 24/7. I thought there was grave importance in that. I just missed I missed the significance of being there, you know, versus being present.
Mm-hmm.
I was always there, but I was never present for my family.
Yeah. So what other lessons do you look for people to garner out of the book?
Okay, to really for the younger people to start out with a proper work life faith balance, realizing that these three areas are so important to us that one can't uh, be more important than the other. Uh, your faith is so important. Your family should come first. I said God comes first because if you God first, you're a better family man. But you've got to place your family and God before you place yourself, and realizing that success is a misnomer as to what it means for many people. For me, I thought success was money. Things. When I moved into my house, uh, and I had a pool table and a bar area, I said, I made it. I got a pool table, you know. but that wasn't fulfilling. They were fleeting things, and the more and more I got, the less I was satisfied. And I measured success incorrect.
So is there a third lesson you want to mention, or shall we go on to
Yes,
something else? Please do.
it's never too late. It's
That's a great comment, Tom.
it's never too late. The most important thing, and I can tell you the comments I've gotten from so many people so far on the book, and they're saying, Tom, how did you do it? And I need to do it. It's never too late. At 64 years old, I was feeling some real pain from a depression standpoint. And I carried a Bible with me for 45 years. Never opened it, carried it. I obtained it when I was in no in college, and carried it. Sat on my credenza at my old house, and it sat on my credenza. I'm looking across at it now in my new house. And in December 2024, I'm sorry, I promised myself that I would change my life. And on January 1, 2025, I don't know what struck me, but I picked the Bible up off the credenza and I sat in my chair. Didn't open it, held it. January 2, did it again, but now I opened it. January 3, did it again, but I started reading it. And I don't want your listeners to think that this is a religious book per se. I'm not seeking to preach in any manner whatsoever. I will tell you, though, that my reconnection with my faith that started with reading the Bible profoundly changed my life. I get up every day now with a smile.
Isn't that great?
it-
What a wonderful feeling that's got to be to start every day with a
Ray,
smile.
the burden. I was a perfectionist all my life, and there's only one perfect being that we know of, and it's God, right? And I was very tough on myself, and never thought, some of the things I did were forgivable. But you can get a clean slate. And before I started this today, I got an email from a gentleman who I've represented his firm for 30 plus years, and he's now the managing partner. And he said a lot of the things resonated with me. He's probably now in his late 40s, early 50s. And he said he's fallen away from his faith. I said, buddy, it's never too late. It's just not too late. And the benefit, if I'm an example of the benefit, it's life changing.
That's great. So the book's only been out for a few weeks. Here we are as we're recording this in the middle of July. How's the book been received? And if anybody is listening to this and wants to get it, where they can find the book? Let's put in a plug, Tom.
Well, the book has been so well received. I am so overjoyed by not only the number of sales without marketing thus far, but I can't tell you the comments and the phone calls that I've gotten from so many people. I've gotten so much more from those comments than the effort it took to write the book. It's I've been overwhelmed by it, and I think it's got the potential for greater success. I really do. And it's available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and Apple, and soon probably in a bookstore, although I'm thinking about that now. And we're going to see where it goes next. But there's a website. After my Italian roots, my publishing company is called CalabrianHillsLiteraryPress.com. CalabrianHillsLiteraryPress.com. And there you'll see a synopsis of the book and the links. And I think that it's hard to read it and not be touched by some of it, because I think we all share some of the same experiences.
I can assure you it brought a couple of tears to my eyes and a couple of gotchas, if you will, as I went through it. In fact, one of the chapters that I liked a lot was being there versus being present. But take just a moment and share a little bit about what that chapter of the book means.
You know, Ray, that encapsulates my 30s, 40s, and 50s. Even when I was home and there physically, right, I wasn't present. My head was working. I didn't have time or the patience. I never had patience. And so I was there, and even when I was there, I wasn't present for my loved ones. And it made me reflect, and I will never make that mistake again.
Yeah. And let me comment on the book at this point, since we're talking about a chapter. For those that might go to get the book, is an easy read. It's relatively short. It's a series of small chapters, lots of chapters, but small chapters, and all right on point, one leading into another. So it's an easy read.
And I try to list some valuable lessons at the end that I have learned, with some pretty prophetic quotes along the way from people that I respect, and to add some real light to where I was at that point in my.
Now, I've got to say, as long and as well as I have known you, I kind of was aghast to hear about your first class cabin on the plane with a Hall of Fame rock band.
My.
You got to share that experience.
Y- y-
It's great.
You know, Ray, I have shared. Uh, I've had so many famous seatmates over the years, and I didn't name any of them in the book, but I mean, just amazing people. And I was so fortuitous for me to spend time with them and really engage with someone for 4 to 5 hours, sometimes over 3 or 4 bourbons. Uh, but I was on a plane and we were waiting to take off. It was a small first class section, but it was only me. And I asked the flight attendant, I said, "What's going on?" I said, "They're a little late, but they're coming." He said, "And you're going to be glad you waited." And then they walked, and they're still going today. They're probably in their 70s, maybe early 80s, all straight laced. I was the only one having a cocktail on the plane, but I had a ball with them. And yeah, it was, I've had many experiences like that. One of my favorites was coming back from New York, and I was coming from New York to the West Coast, and sitting next to me was a Hall of Fame prior football coach and owner of a pro football team. He was leaving the NFL draft, and his wife had fallen asleep. And we spent about 3 hours just talking football.
That's great.
Yeah.
You know, I think, like you, had a lot of experience in meeting a lot of people, but the one that I remember very fondly, this was in the days of, you know, when you're in the first class, you could actually smoke if you wanted to.
Yeah.
That'll tell you how far back it was.
Yeah.
Not that I was smoking, but
Yeah.
just, I mean, that's how far back this
Yeah.
goes. And I've got a paperback book, not my Kindle or my iPad, that I'm reading. And I'm by the window in first class. And this fella comes in and sits down. I recognize him instantly, but I have always throughout my life tried to not to be starstruck and,
Right.
you know, bother people. And so I just continued to read my book, and he couldn't help himself. He turned to me and he in his very special way with his Latin accent. And he
Yeah.
says, "You know who I'm?" I said, "Yes, yes, Chichi, I do know who you are."
Oh my gosh.
And, and then we had I guess it was about a 2.5 hour flight to Dallas. I didn't get a word in after that.
I'm sure. You know, Ray, that brings up one story. I was sitting in row 1, and next to me with a nice guy. We had just a little bit of chat, and I went up to the lavatory, and the flight attendant said, "How do you like your seatmate?" I said, "He seems like a nice fellow." They said, "Do you know who he is?" I said, "Not a clue." Well, he was one of the most famous rappers in the world. Now, I didn't know rap music, but there he was, and we then I said, "I understand you're in the music business," and then we started talking. It was a
Yeah,
lot of fun.
that's great. Well, Tom, back to a serious note for a moment. You mentioned earlier about suffering from a depressed part of your life, from depression in a part of your life. Um, how did you recognize it? How did you deal with it, and how were you able to get over it?
Yeah, right. That's the reason really for the book. Uh, when I was in it, I didn't know how to get out of it, but I knew I had to do it myself. Yeah, I'm not someone who has ever gone to a psychiatrist, a psychologist. I wouldn't take drugs. I didn't want to numb myself, uh, but I had to dig out of it. And it was fortuitous, right? That Bible sat on my credenza, and I picked it up. And as I say in the book, it took me 9 months to read it because it was a very determinative read. I wasn't good, and I can tell you that if I read it at 20 or 30, it would not have had the import to me that it had at 64 years old, 65 years
Hmm.
old. I'm sorry, 65.
Hmm.
And but that was the start. And I then took a trip to Italy uh, with my cousin, who was a Marine officer. We went to visit the American cemeteries in Italy, and we went into the Duomo, the Basilica in Bologna, and he said, "Let's go to church." It was a little side chapel. I said, Arthur, it's been a long time." But we went. We Communion time came. He said, "Let's go." I said, "Arthur, no, I can't. We're going to communion." He was like my bigger brother. On the way back from communion, there was a confessional, and he saw a priest hearing confessions. I said, "Arthur, where are you going?" He said, "I'm going to confession." I said, "Arthur, does he speak English?" He said, "I'll let you know." And on his way back, I said, "Did he speak English?" He said, "Not a word." And I was the next one in there. And in my broken Italian, I did my best. And I came out of that confessional a new man. And 3 weeks later was Christmas Eve, and my mom, we celebrate our big Italian feast on Christmas Eve, and she said, "Tomorrow I'll be at church at 9 o'clock." She knows I don't go. Well, I got up the next morning and I went, and I found her in church. She had no idea I was coming, and she cried, and I realized that I was home, and
Yeah,
I did it. I did it,
that's
and
great.
that's where, and ever since then, I've not missed a mass. I talk about in the book, I never had the time to give up to make that hour. I look forward to that hour every week, and yeah, I've been so blessed because I believe my people look at me and say, "My, he's got it all." They would have never known that I needed a lot of fixing, and I've been fixed.
So, Tom, that's a perfect segue into this question. If you could go back 30 years, and you talked about this isn't for old guys, just for old guys
Right.
like you and me who
Mhm.
might have done it wrong,
Right.
but it's for the young ones as well. So if you could go back 30 years, what would you tell that young Tom Giachetti today?
I would tell them, "You're going to do it wrong. We're all going to make mistakes, but it's recognizing them and realizing that if you know them and have a relationship with God, you can overcome anything." If I had that relationship when I had pressure and lows and, you know, didn't sleep or whatever, if I had that relationship, I'm confident that life would have been a whole lot better along that journey. But I cut that out.
So, Tom, who's the best audience for the book? Who needs to learn those lessons?
Well, Ray, I think the audience is threefold, and it doesn't depend upon your profession or vocation. think the lessons extend across, all formats and all genres and all types of professions or vocations for those in the start of the climb, so they have a better foundation. For those in the middle of the climb who may not be able to get out of their own way at this point, all right? But there's still a lot of time. And for those at the end who may have been dealing with the depression or knowing you're replaceable and you're looking back at your life and you get melancholy and say, wow, I'm going to be 65. I'll be 67 in another month. I'm on the back three. What did I do with all that time? Was it well spent? And even if it wasn't, what do I do with those 3 holes that are left to make sure that I give it my best effort? And I really believe so young people, middle age, older people, moms and dads, for their younger kids who are in college or going to start, into work, I think it's a great lesson. I've gotten so many positive emails from younger people saying, thank you, because I will succumb to this, but I know that there are ways for me to better address the highs and lows and all those money things that we think are so important.
So, Tom, as we wrap up, let's remind everybody once again, where they can get the book. In addition, I'm sure they can get it on Amazon.com as well. But what's the Calabria? What is it again?
It's www. I should have made it easier, but I just wanted to honor my family. www.Calabrian Hills. Calabria is where my family's from, Italy, and it's very hilly. Calabrian Hills Literary-Press.com.
That's great. Well, Tom, you get almost the last word, but certainly the last word of seriousness. What do you want to share that we haven't talked about already?
Right. I think we've hit everything. I would encourage your listeners to go out and read it. I kept the price very, very inexpensive because this is not about money for me. The vast majority of the net proceeds are going to go to charities. It's not about fame or fortune. I've been there. I've done that. And ultimately, I found it unfulfilling. And this is my way of giving back and hopefully making a difference on countless lives.
That's wonderful. Well, Tom, best of luck with the book, The Ladder, The Precarious Climb to Success. Amazon or Calabria Hills Press. Anyway, they'll get it. So, Tom, congratulations on the book. It was a wonderful read for me, and I sincerely appreciate this as an additional part of our ongoing friendship.
God bless you, my friend. I'm privileged to know you, and I'm a better man for it. Thank you.
Thank you. You're very kind. And now, to all of our listeners, go out there and up your assets.
This has been another edition of the Up Your Assets podcast, hosted by Ray Ferrara, CFP founder and executive chair of Provise Management Group, LLC. The preceding presentation was for general information purposes only and not personalized advice. Seek out a professional before making any financial decisions. Additionally, no guests pay to be on the show or are paid to be on the show. The opinions expressed are their own and not the host's or the show.